Hey everybody, guess what? It is time for Lego Church. Not only is it time for Lego Church, but believe it or not, it is the 10th anniversary of Lego Church. That's right, believe it or not, we have been doing this for 10 weeks. Can you believe that? 10 weeks. The time has just flown by, you know? But it has been fun. And I sure hope you guys have enjoyed it too. So the last couple weeks, we have been studying the first part of the book of Joshua. Now, Joshua took over from Moses, as you remember, and it was time for the Israelites to go into the promised land. So the first week we learned about that and how Joshua sent out some spies to check out Jericho, because that was the first city that they were going to overtake. Now, when they were in Jericho, they found this lady named Rahab, and they had to hide in her house because the guards in Jericho found out that the Israelites were there, and they were afraid of the Israelites because they had heard some stuff about them getting out of Egypt and how God took care of them. So Rahab hid them, but they made a deal with Rahab, as you remember, that when the time came to overtake Jericho and the Israelites come, that her and her family would be saved. So in order to do that, they asked Rahab to put a red cord out the window of her room. Her house was built just kind of inside the city walls. And so she did that. And then she let them go out the window and told them to go and hide in the desert, in the wilderness, for 3 days until the guards stopped looking for them. That's where we ended week 1. Now, week 2, last week, we saw how God's plan is a great plan, and how God's plan to get them across the Jordan River was absolutely amazing, and how God parted the waters of the Jordan River. In fact, it said that the waters heaped up. It was amazing. I hope you remember. So this week, we're going to continue God's plan, and we're going to see exactly how this story finishes up when the Israelites go to Jericho. So let's go check out Jericho, and I'll kind of refresh you what Jericho looks like. Let's go take a look. There is the city of Jericho. Come down and take a closer look here to refresh your memory. We've got some guards on the wall here. And the gate, and it says that the city was shut up tight. So we got to close that gate. And some more guards on the wall here. And down inside the city, we've got some merchants down there and some horses. And some people buying and selling, some guys down around the fire. And over here, as you remember, we have Rahab's house. Now remember, the spies told her that she had to have everyone in her family that wanted to be saved here in her house. Let's check it out, who she got in there. Oh, there's Rahab. She's got some of her family members. Wait a minute. Who's this guy? Jonah. Come on, Jonah. Remember Jonah from a few weeks ago? Jonah, you had 3 weeks. Remember? Come on, man. Stop trying to hog the spotlight. Okay. So there's Rahab's house, and as you can see, put the roof back on there. There is the red cord hanging out the window. All right. Jericho. They don't realize it, but they're ready to fall. So now our memory is refreshed about Jericho and just exactly what that city looked like. And you also got to see Rahab's house and the red cord that was hanging out the window so that the Israelites knew that that was where she lived. Now, let's go and pick up the Bible and find out exactly what happened next after the Israelites crossed the Jordan River and were heading towards Jericho. All right, I went and got my Bible, and we're going to look at Joshua chapter 5. We're going to start in verse 13. Something amazing happens to Joshua. Check this out. In verse 13 it says, "Now when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, 'Are you for us, or are you for our enemies?' 'Neither,' he replied, 'but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.' Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, 'What message does my Lord have for his servant?'" That sounds pretty amazing. Let's go check that out and see what the angel looks like and see Joshua's response. All right, so you remember here is Joshua, and it said that a man appeared in front of him, and he was the commander of the Lord's army with a sword in his hand. And when Joshua found this out, he bowed to the ground. And the angel told him what God wanted him to do: march around the city once for 6 days. On the seventh day, march around 7 times, and then shout and blow trumpets. All right, let's continue on in chapter 6, where in verse 1 it says, "Now Jericho was tightly shut up, and because of the Israelites, no one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I have delivered Jericho into your hands along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have all the people give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse and the people will go up, every man straight in.'" Now that's amazing. So, every day for 6 days, they have to march around Jericho 1 time. And then on the 7th day, they march around it 7 times. And after the 7th time, they're to blow the horns and scream, and supposedly the walls are going to fall down. Pretty amazing. Let's go check this out and see if the Israelites can pull that off. And once again, we have the Ark of the Covenant. As you can see, the 4 priests are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and they are leading the way as the Israelites are getting ready to march around the city. There's Joshua, some Israelites, some more Israelites, and some more Israelites. Okay, now we've seen the Ark of the Covenant, and we've seen the Israelites, and they're ready to do their marching. 1 time every day for 6 days, and then on the 7th day, remember, they are to scream and blow the trumpets, and the walls will fall down. So let's go watch this marching. All right, so on that 7th day, after they had finished marching around the city 7 times with the Ark of the Covenant in the lead, they shouted and blew horns. And look at that. Jericho is a pile of rubble, except for, just as they promised, Rahab's house. And there's Rahab and her family, still safe. Just as God promised. All right, now wasn't that an amazing plan? God has amazing plans, you know, and certainly that was a great plan. Israelites didn't have to do anything but march around that city, and God took care of them. He had a plan the whole time for how they were going to defeat Jericho, and they didn't have to do anything but march and then blow some trumpets and scream, and God took care of the rest. Now, let's go and see with my 2 little boys, Solomon and Samuel. We're going to show you how really amazing God's plan was in this story. All right, let's go find Solomon and Samuel. All right, guys, I'm going to show you something really cool in a section of Matthew in the Bible. Now, I know a lot of people probably think this is a really boring part of the Bible because it just talks about a bunch of names, but I promise if you just hang in there, you'll see something really cool at the end, okay? It's not gonna be boring, I promise. Sound good? Okay, so here we are in the book of Matthew. Believe it or not, Rahab is in the book of Matthew. It's in the very first chapter when they start going through the lineage of Rahab, and it goes even further back than that. But we're going to start at Rahab, and this is kind of a boring part of the Bible, and hopefully you can stay awake for this, but this is really cool. We'll see God's great plan at the end of this. All right, so here's Rahab, and Rahab married a guy named Salmon. There he is. Salmon married Rahab. Okay, and they had a son named Boaz, and Boaz married Ruth. All right, and then Ruth and Boaz had a guy named Jesse as their son, and after Jesse came David. Remember King David? Okay, that's a great plan, but here we go. We're going to keep going. Then King Solomon came along. And the next member in their family tree was Rehoboam. And the next one is Abijah. And the next one is Asa. And then the next one in the family tree was Jehoshaphat. And the next one was Jehoram. And the next one was Uzziah. And the next one was Jotham. Now, just so that you understand this, Jotham was the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Rahab. Okay, so let's keep going and find out who his children were. We've got Ahaz. Hold on a second. Let's go check on Solomon and Samuel and see if they're paying attention. Oh, come on. You couldn't stay awake for just a few minutes? I know it's boring. Hey, wake up. Pay attention. Come on, we're almost done, I promise. Wake up. Oh, all right. I guess we lost these two guys. I hope the rest of you out there are awake. All right, it looks like we lost those two. I hope that you guys are still paying attention because we're almost done here. This right here, after Ahaz, was Hezekiah. After Hezekiah came Manasseh. After Manasseh came a guy named Amnon. After Amnon came a guy named Josiah. He looks like a cool dude. After Josiah came Jeconiah. After Jeconiah came Shealtiel. After Shealtiel came Zerubbabel. After Zerubbabel came Abihud. He looks familiar. After Abihud comes Eliakim. Now, just so that you figure this out, Eliakim is the great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandson of Rahab and Salmon. Let's find out who's next. Eliakim. There's Eliakim right there. Then comes Azor. Then comes Zadok. Then comes Akim. Then comes Elihud. Then comes Eliezer. Then comes Mathan. And then comes Jacob. And then comes a guy named Joseph. Now I think we know who Joseph is, don't we? Joseph was the earthly father of Jesus. How about that? How awesome was that? You never knew that the lineage of Jesus had Rahab in it. Isn't that amazing? The one person in her family that God saved from Jericho hundreds and hundreds of years before Jesus was Rahab. And Rahab was the great 35 times great grandmother of Joseph, who was Jesus' earthly father. That just is an amazing plan. God always has plans, and sometimes they take a long time to come to fruition. For us, probably not such a long time for God, but his plans are always amazing. And in that story, we could see two amazing plans: the falling of the walls of Jericho and the saving of Rahab, who happens to be related to Joseph, who is Jesus' earthly father. All right, we're going to stop the story right there. Next week, we're going to try something a little new. I'm going to take a request from my son Solomon. He wanted me to do a special story next week, so I'm going to work on that. In the meantime, I hope to see you guys next week. I hope you love the story about Jericho and Joshua and the amazing saving of Rahab and what that meant. God has amazing plans. All you got to do is trust in Him. All right, guys, have a great week, and I will see you next time. Week number 11 coming up.